October 29th, 2003, Carmelo Anthony debuts with the Denver Nuggets, but history was supposed to be different.
Because I'm like, they promised me. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to Detroit.
But how would his legacy change if the Pistons actually drafted him?
I think we go back to back if I'm there. I still think about that though to this day, bro. I'm like.
Today we find out how this would play out, as in this reality the Pistons did take Carmelo, whose impressive scoring would immediately have an impact in Detroit, as he quickly finds a role within an already contending Pistons group, unlike the unlimited green light he had in Denver, which would influence his personal praise, because while with the Nuggets he'd be neck to neck with LeBron for Rookie of the Year, in this reality it was King James as the undisputed clear-cut awardee. However, the bright side was, Melo was already in position to compete for a ring in this reality, helping the Pistons land 64 wins on the year. Because if you didn't know, the Pistons were the would-be champions this season in real life. Even without Carmelo, this roster was the best that the East had to offer. So by no surprise, they'd make it to the NBA Finals, up against the Los Angeles Lakers, where Anthony would be prepared to step up to the moment, averaging over 20 a night in a scoring duel with Kobe Bryant. But the real driving force for the Pistons would be their team play and the excellence of Chauncey, who would go on to win the Finals MVP, as the Pistons defeat the Lakers in the Finals, just like they did in real life. Meaning so far, the only real change would be that Anthony is now an NBA champion. Albeit, that change will shift the way we talk about Carmelo entirely, especially considering this is only the start of his story, and only time will tell what happens next. Because for the next few years, the NBA will only have minor changes, as Detroit is a top team with or without Carmelo. So for the most part, the drafts and free agency will remain unaltered. But eventually down the line, this change will create a ripple effect, totally altering the NBA as we know it, redefining legacies, establishing new dynasties, and potentially revising entire GOAT debates. However, before we get to that point, we'll see if Melo is able to push the Pistons into dynasty territory in the 2000s. On a great pace, landing his first All-Star berth while also being selected to the All-NBA second team. And it was only a matter of time before he was back in the finals, but this matchup wouldn't mirror the real-life version. With a change in seeding out west, it'd be T-Mac and Yav's Rockets facing off with the Pistons instead of the Spurs, which would be another great test for Melo, clashing with a phenomenal score in the finals again. But for McGrady, this was only his first finals appearance, whereas Melo already had some experience, so after only 5 games, the Detroit Pistons were being crowned as NBA champions to complete the repeat. And even though the finals MVP trophy would again go to Chauncey Billups, this one would hold more weight for Carmelo. The Pistons couldn't get the job done in real life this year, but with Anthony's addition, they were starting to look unstoppable, and narratives were building around Melo. As LeBron has still yet to even make the playoffs, the media was starting to consider Anthony as the steal of the draft, poised to start the NBA's next big dynasty.
The battle for the Eastern Conference continues, and in our matchup tonight, we'll see the Detroit Pistons going up against the Miami Heat. Game 1 of the conference finals.
Well, that was being put to the test come the 06 conference finals, where another member of the 03 draft class, Dwayne Wade, was confident that he could take the throne. With Detroit falling to the 4th seed after some roster tweaks, the window was open for the duel of Wade and Shaq. But Carmelo wasn't going to make it easy, reminding the Heat who the back-to-back defending champions were, leading all scorers on the court to take an early 1-0 lead in the series, which was expected. Despite the seeding difference, the Pistons were still heavily favored, although Wade was about to shock everyone. Not just retaliating with a Game 2 win, but then they'd catch the overly confident Pistons off guard with a sucker punch in the next 2 games, sweeping the rug from under them to take a 3-1 lead. Meaning for the first time, Melo's back was against the wall, facing the possibility of defeat. But if anyone could pull off a 3-1 comeback this season, it would be this Pistons group, who were looking to take the series game by game with a great start in Game 5 in the final moments, where one play could shift the momentum of the entire series.
Anthony backs in, turns, puts it up, puts it in!
With the clutch basket, Melo gave Detroit the lead, and presumably the win, giving the Pistons confidence headed into Game 6. Except there was one major issue: Melo may have left too much time on the clock. Huge shot from Carmelo, but the Miami Heat still have 6 seconds left in the clock for an opportunity to win the game. Dwayne Wade with the ball, driving it into the paint. The light for the win! Wade hits it! No timeouts for the Pistons! The full court heat from Billups! Melo and the Pistons are stunned. All of a sudden, Carmelo was forced down to reality, experiencing defeat for the first time in the NBA. And while he could feel some pride knowing that he had lost to the eventual champions, at some point, the realization would sink in that success is never guaranteed in the NBA, which is a lesson he'd have to learn quick, as the next season presents a new challenge as the Pistons defensive anchor Wallace leaves the team for Chicago, putting Anthony in a situation where for the first time in his career, a deep playoff run wouldn't be a walk in the park. So this would be a crucial season for the fourth-year star, with the world waiting to see how he responds to his first stretch of adversity, and with the Pistons being his base foundation, in this reality, he leaned into the team-focused mentality, creating a seamless transition without Wallace still maintaining control of the East. But of course, the real test was the playoffs, and if he could get back to the finals, starting with a warm-up against the Nets in round 1, to then be thrown directly into the most hyped series of the season, the first battle between Carmelo and LeBron James. Although, while this series would be hyped up as must-see TV, it wouldn't take long for Melo to put the debates to rest on who would win the series, sweeping Cleveland easily, further increasing the scrutiny towards LeBron.
I don't think he's a winner. I ask you again, what has he won?
He wasn't a winner in this
Well, that's what I'm saying, but he hasn't won anything.
As you can see, the story around LeBron in this universe was vastly different. Not making the finals in 07, and with him currently in the shadow of Melo, how will this affect his legacy? It's looking rough right now, but stay tuned. The LeBron and Melo rivalry will continue for years, and James will have a chance to redeem himself. But for now, Carmelo is finishing up his run of the East, defeating Boston in the conference finals, finding himself back in the NBA finals with much still to prove in his young career. He's achieved a lot in only 4 seasons, 2 rings and a handful of personal accolades, but he was still missing a finals MVP. So against the Phoenix Suns, he'd look to take advantage of his opportunity. If they're able to win here, he'd be guaranteed the award, but there was a major hurdle. Winning wouldn't be easy, because for the second season straight, Melo and the Pistons would face the daunting task of trailing 3-1. Except this time they were more prepared, making an effort to win the next game by a wide margin, preventing the same fate they felt against the Heat, who eventually knocked this one up for a final Game 7, one that would feature 2 stars with a lot at stake. The 2-time MVP Steve Nash was fighting for his first championship, while Carmelo was looking to prove his worth as a centerpiece of a franchise, resulting in a close game late, with this entire season boiling down to these last few possessions. The first major Game 7 of Carmelo's career. It's in the finals, trailing by 2 to the Phoenix Suns. Chauncey Billups with the ball now. Steve Nash guarding him. Great defense from Nash. That's rare. Nash is able to get the rebound. They're off to the races. Raja Bell with Prince guarding him. They're slowing it down. They're going to Amari, probably their best player, if not Steve Nash. Nash is open for the 3. Doesn't pull the trigger. Gets it back down low to Amari. Amari forces a shot. Wallace with the block. Nash gets it back. Another tough shot, but a foul. It feels like the Pistons did everything they honestly could there in that possession defensively, but still the Suns get 2 more on the board. Trailing by 4 now. Carmelo and the Pistons still have time. This is a huge game for Carmelo. If he wins here, he's more than likely going to be the finals MVP. This is big for his legacy. Billups to pull up in the clutch. Billups shot rattles in. 2-point game. Just under 90 seconds remaining in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It's a 2-point game down the stretch. One of the most intense Game 7s you're ever going to see in the finals. Steve Nash to pick her over to Amari. Nash, the flashy pass. Unbelievable. In a moment of this caliber to do a pass like that, only something that Steve Nash would do. Billups with the ball, trailing by 4 now. He's going for the pick and roll with Wallace. Billups coming around, the pull-up jumper. Billups, it's off. It's off. Amari to rebound. With only a minute left, the Pistons desperately need a stop. Shawn Marion, he finds Diaw in the paint for the dunk. Coming out of the timeout, this one is slipping away from Detroit a little bit. It is a 6-point game, 54 seconds left. There's still time, but you have to execute down the stretch. Billups driving in on Nash again. Billups attacking Nash every trip down. That's clearly the game plan. The hook is good. Gets him back within 4. Your defense has to be flawless here. They're trapping Nash at half court. The pass to Amari. Oh, man, that's too easy for Phoenix. It was a good effort. Pistons another timeout. I don't think you could trap a guy of Steve Nash's facilitating prowess. But nonetheless, on the inbounds, they go to Carmelo for 3. Melo, bang! Melo makes the 3-point game with 33.5 seconds left. You don't have to foul here. You can try to play defense, get the stop, get the board. You have a chance to send this one to overtime. Blowing by Melo is Bell. Melo recovering. He's still there riding his hips. Steve Nash with the basketball. Deep versus Chauncey Billups. Nash one-on-one with Billups. The spin move, driving into the paint, slowing it down. Nash pulling it back in the paint. The pump fake. It's Billups biting. They're swinging it out. Amari Stoudemire, 3 seconds. His hook is off. The Pistons have it with a timeout. With 11 seconds left in this game, let's see what Detroit drew up coming up the timeout. It has to be No, it's Billups for three. Billups misses the board. Prince, Melo to Billups. 4 seconds left. Chauncey, you have to get a three. What is he doing? It's over. The Suns are your 2007 NBA champions, outlasting the Pistons in the final seconds to win Steve Nash's championship in this reality, ending Carmelo's hopes of Ring 3. But after getting so close to that pinnacle again, he'd have confidence that Detroit would be back soon enough.
That's it. It's over. The Celtics are heading back to the NBA Finals.
Except that confidence was being stripped away. There was a new super team in town, who 18 days later would go on to be crowned as the NBA champions, as they were poised to run the league for years. Again, being the last hurdle on the way of the Pistons' finals run in 09, who in this reality would keep Billups in hopes to remain contenders, but that wasn't going to be enough amidst a team featuring 4 full-fledged all-stars, robbing yet another season from Melo, to only then end up losing this year's finals to Kobe Bryant. Copying real life, even if it was against a different opponent, setting the stage for the toughest stretch of Anthony's career so far, with no signs of light at the end of the tunnel. Because even though he'd respond with the best season of his career in 2010, winning an MVP, something he never did in a reality drafted by Denver, it wouldn't mean much at the end of the day. The Celtics were still winning the East for a third duel with LA, one that would see Kobe crowned as the champion again, completing his repeat to land his 5th ring, which all came after another duel between Melo and LeBron in round 2, where this time around, it was James coming out on top with a less impressive Cavs team, fueling discussions surrounding LeBron and Carmelo's budding rivalry, leading to Anthony, frustrated with the Pistons' direction, commenting on LeBron's lack of championships.
If you ain't driving the bus, don't walk around and talk about you a champion. If you riding the bus, I don't want to hear it.
Carmelo's story was now shifting. He was being painted as a sidekick, a player who couldn't lead a winning team as the #1 guy. And just to add more fuel to the fire, LeBron was again the one to end Anthony's season, now as a member of the Heat, in a playoff run that in this reality would result in James' first career championship, to go with a winning finals record this time around. As for Carmelo Anthony, with another loss on an aging Pistons roster, surrounded by super teams in the East, he'd have a huge decision in the offseason, with him being a free agent as speculation builds around whether he'll re-sign with Detroit or consider a change of scenery for some star help.
So Carmelo Anthony going to LA would basically save that franchise and keep it relevant for not just the next 2 years while he and Kobe play together, but after that.
Then you look at Chicago. Tom Thibodeau is an exceptional coach, and we all know that. I think Carmelo is exactly what Chicago needs.
So who will it be? Detroit, LA, or Chicago?
And it is game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls, the #1 and the #2 seed.
Carmelo decided to join the Chicago Bulls in a sign-and trade for Boozer, joining the reigning MVP as they were favorites to win right away. Melo was fitting in perfectly with Chicago's system, surrounded by great team defenders and providing a scoring punch on and off the ball, much like his early days in Detroit. Of course, paired alongside Derrick Rose, as the two look like arguably the best duo in basketball, completely dominating the Heat in games 1 and 2, with all signs pointing to the Bulls easily winning the championship this year. But tragedy was about to strike.
Oh, Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee and down.
Derrick Rose would tear his ACL in Game 3 against the Heat. A devastating blow to not only the Bulls, but to the basketball world. The spirits of Chicago were crushed, and even with a valiant effort to win one more game, the Heat would take advantage of the opportunity and come back to win the series after 7. Eventually going on to defeat the Thunder, winning a 2nd ring in a row, and putting an end to what was supposed to be Melo's redemption season. Which was terrible timing, because the rest of the league has really shaken up over the last few seasons. And as a wave of young stars start to appear on teams around the league, the window for Melo was shrinking. But there was a bright side. With Melo around, Derrick could take his time rehabbing. With him averaging a career high in points per game, Chicago still had one of the best teams in the league. So there was no rush to get Rose back in the court before he was 100%, which to foreshadow would result in Rose returning at a much higher level than he did in real life. And that could play a huge stroll down the stretch. However, for now, Carmelo had a chance to silence the criticism. He finally had a great supporting cast and had a chance to prove he can be the #1 guy, finishing the year with 50 wins as part of his best season yet. Outstanding season for Melo, MVP #2, over 30 points per night. Easily the best season of his career so far. But that didn't mean anything if there was no ring. And of course, in order to do that, he'd still have to find a way to get past the Heat. Luckily, Wade and Bosh were starting to slow down compared to the last seasons, so this time, Carmelo had a chance, catching Miami off guard with a Game 1 win. LeBron would retaliate though, winning the next 2 games in a row with little doubt of the outcome, only for Melo to respond with another huge game of his own, tying the series up at 2 apiece. But the redemption story wasn't lasting much longer. The Heat were simply the better team with a lot more star power. Miami was following up with 2 more wins to win out the East for the 3rd season in a row, going on to win a rematch of last year's finals, completing their three-peat, which also means LeBron now has 3 rings, surpassing Carmelo and essentially putting to rest all the debates of their so-called rivalry. Well, at least in the fans' minds, but for Melo, in his eyes, this rivalry was only just getting started. Because Rose was back the following season, and with the prolonged rehab, he may not have been an MVP at this point, but he'd certainly be in an all-star level. Additionally, Jimmy Butler has been quietly developing in the background, and Joakim Noah was this year's Defensive Player of the Year. So when you add all that to the mix, with Carmelo playing well enough to still be in MVP combos, and you'd have a formula for success. The Bulls were landing the 1st seed, and were ready for the playoffs, making big statements in the first 2 rounds, easily defeating the Knicks, and then going on to play John Wall's Wizards for yet another easy series. But as we all know, the true test was going to be the conference finals. Carmelo has been struggling with this Heat hurdle for years, but this year's team will give him his best chance yet, going up 2-0 early, defending their home court. Except the Heat were also defending their home floor after trailing by 2. They'd get the series all tied up again, which coincidentally, the last 2 seasons were also stalemates after 4. And both times, the Heat went on to win the series. So it would be a sense of deja vu for Carmelo, every season looking close after 4, only for the Heat to run away with it, and as Game 5 finds Chicago trailing late, there was fear it could happen again. Chicago has had no luck in defeating the Heat, and trailing by 1 late in the 4th of Game 5, history could repeat itself if they can't figure something out. Derrick Rose with the ball now, back from injuries, playing great. Rose the size up on the ISO, drives to the paint, draws the foul. Rose does sink both free throws to now give Chicago the lead. Can they hang on though is the big question with 90 seconds remaining in this basketball game. LeBron James, the ISO versus Carmelo at the top. He's getting the screen. LeBron the pull-up J from the mid-range to now put the lead back in the hands of the Miami Heat. A lot of basketball left to be played though. Derrick Rose with it, driving to the paint. Rose again forcing the issue, a floater. Rose is battling it out with LeBron. Now the lead goes back to Chicago, and King James has it again. Carmelo Anthony now an opportunity to play some defense, hopefully get a stop and extend Chicago's lead. LeBron driving it past Melo to pull up Jay for the free throw. It's off. Joakim Noah with the board. The Bulls are slowing things down. LeBron is on D Rose. Rose trying to find Melo in the paint. Carmelo Anthony in the paint, in the post, kicks it out to Luol Deng for 3. It's off. Joe fighting for it, does not get it. Curry with the board. LeBron off to the races, gets it to Dwayne Wade, driving to the paint, attacking the basket with a floater. It rattles out. Bosh to rebound. His putback no good. Luol Deng the board. 31 seconds left in this ball game. Deng on the break, slowing things down, gets it up. Rose to Melo for 3. Oh, it's off. Rose the rebound, and they foul. What a sequence, only to be followed up by 2 split free throws from Rose. The steal from Rose. Oh my goodness, he split the free throws but made up for it. I was not expecting that. He doesn't make the same mistake twice, hits both those free throws, and the Bulls are clearly ahead with 4-point advantage now. 2-possession game. Miami does not have a lot of opportunities here. They're swinging around 4 to win it. Derrick Rose is there. Great defense. They're wasting a lot of time on the clock here. Curry in the paint. Show with the block from behind, but there's a foul called. Rose ended up missing a free throw again. So now it's a 3-point game with 10 seconds left. Miami has a chance to tie it. LeBron off the inbound. LeBron, it's off. Jimmy Butler the board. And with no timeouts left, if Jimmy Butler hits 1, it's over, but he misses the first. Jimmy Butler, his second free throw. He hits it. This one's done. Finally, Melo and the Bulls were in position to overcome the Heat, and only needing 1 more win, they'd play their best ball in Game 6, dethroning the East biggest titan. And their biggest challenge was now behind them. In the finals, they'd face off with Curry and the Warriors, who may have made it to this point before they were truly ready. Because the inexperience was showing, as the battle-hardened Bulls wouldn't take long to close this out, winning the series after 5 games as the Rose and Melo story reaches the goal that everyone hoped for. And it would in fact be Anthony taking home the finals MVP, silencing the doubters, proving he was capable of being the driving force. And one more thing, as he earns his 3rd ring, he's now tied back up with LeBron. So as a bit of a side quest, we'll see who ends up with more in the end to close out their rivalry. Which may be challenging for James, who decided to accept his player option and stay in Miami one more season, still believing his group had unfinished business. Although it may prove to have been a mistake, because for the 2nd year in a row, the Bulls were stampeding by this matchup, hoping to be the next East team to run the league for years. Except the finals presented a whole new challenge, as they'd face a determined Kobe, eager to win Ring 6, and even though they'd win Game 1 to open up the series, Kobe Bryant and his Twin Tower supporting cast of both Mark and Pau Gasol would wind up being too much, cruising by with 4 straight wins, ending the Bulls' hopes of a repeat. And thanks to a seemingly unrelated Carmelo redraft, Kobe now has 6 rings, which could undoubtedly change some conversations in the GOAT debate. And speaking of the GOAT debate, LeBron was now officially heading back to Cleveland on a mission to bring home a ring to his city. With Kyrie and Griffin in this reality, they'd have enough to get past the Bulls in the conference finals, on their way to maintaining the canon event of a ring in 2016, defeating the Warriors, winning LeBron his 4th championship for a flawless 4-win finals record, also again passing Anthony in rings, which now leaves us with Carmelo at 32 years old, surrounded by another aging supporting cast, and a championship window crashing down quickly. So needless to say, 2017 may very well be the most important season yet. But there was good news. The Bulls still had some gas left in the tank, and with the rise of Butler to a clear all-star level, they'd have a great chance, landing a 60-win season to earn the 1st seed, which they put to use in round 1 against the Celtics, closing that one out in a sweep. The 2nd round was a bit more of a challenge against a deep Hornets team, but with Carmelo still being one of the top scorers in the league, putting up all NBA numbers, the Hornets would be nothing more than a stepping stone after 6 to make it to the conference finals, who for the first time in years didn't feature LeBron James. This was going to be by far Chicago's biggest opportunity to win again. The East was a cakewalk without any real threats in the way, so of course they'd make it to the NBA Finals, but their toughest opponent of the year would be waiting there. This season's MVP, Anthony Davis, was the last obstacle in the way of a ring. But he wasn't alone. Paired with Giannis, and Phoenix will have one of the scariest front courts we've ever seen. And to make matters worse, an aging Joakim Noah didn't have the same defensive prowess as he did the last few seasons. So we'd see the Suns take a commanding 2-0 lead. But with as much veteran experience as the Bulls roster had, you should expect them to respond to the challenge, which they would, putting the first 2 games in the past, and with masterclass performances from Carmelo in games 3 and 4, this series would be all tied up. A very familiar situation for Chicago, who has been all tied up after 4 several times, and they were prepared for the best of 3 that follows. Although nothing could have prepared them for what would happen next. Anthony Davis would have his 2 greatest games of his career to wrap up the series, and they weren't even close. The Suns were defeating the Bulls in blowout wins, and for the 2nd time in a simulation, Phoenix was crowned as the champions. As for Carmelo, this would end up being the last time we would see him contend in a Bulls uniform, because over the course of the next 3 seasons, not only Carmelo, but even LeBron would be afterthoughts, as the New York Knicks would be all the buzz, forming a dynamic duo of James Harden and Kevin Durant, which would result in a three-peat from 2018 to 2020, defeating the Suns in 2018, and then in 2019 coming out on top against the Pelicans to finally close out their chapter with a triumph over the Golden State Warriors in 2020. The Bulls would have 2 conference finals appearances over this stretch, but they were clearly slowing down, specifically Carmelo, who was still playing well, but wasn't close to the superstar level we've come to know. And with age catching up to him, he'd announced that the 2021 season would be his last. And in poetic fashion, it'd be as a member of the Pistons for a final reunion with the team that started it all. Except this wasn't just a sentimental reunion. Detroit were actual contenders now, with not only Embiid, but also Donovan Mitchell. And with these 2 stars at the helm, it allowed Melo to ease into a lesser role and do what he could to help his team win, averaging just shy of 20 points per night with a real chance of ring number 4. Because this offseason, KD abandoned the Knicks, meaning the East was wide open, except there was one final familiar foe in the way. LeBron and the Cavs, who additionally added in Luka Doncic to the mix after some insane draft lottery luck. And despite him being very young, he was still a capable all-star. So we were in for a dogfight here in Carmelo's last playoff run. And what a fitting finale with LeBron James, both back on the team that drafted him, and they'd battle it out with each other to set the stage for one last climatic duel, a Game 7. 48 minutes of basketball to end the rivalry between these two legends, and it'd be no shock that both sides would fight to the very end. The rivalry ends here, a Game 7 between Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James. Right now, Melo and his Pistons are trailing by 2, but with Melo with the ball driving to the paint, his lay, the basket, and the foul over LeBron. And just like that, the Pistons now have the 1-point lead. LeBron James bringing the ball up the court, Melo on him. These two legends have been going at it for years, and it all concludes here. LeBron James driving in on Melo, going to the left, into the paint. He gets denied at the rim. LeBron is blocked by Embiid. Donovan Mitchell in the fast break. Luka Doncic there for the defense, slowing things down. Holiday has the ball now. They're going to Melo. Melo gets it. His lay is good. Blake Griffin gambled. This one is far from over, though. There is still 54 seconds left in this game, and it's only a 3-point lead for the Detroit Pistons. You have LeBron James here with the basketball. Carmelo Anthony trying to play defense on him is going to be a tough task. LeBron driving into the paint, attacking yet again in the post, nowhere to go. LeBron slows it down, gets over to Luka Doncic. He also has nowhere to go. Great defense from Detroit. The pull from Luka, it rattles out. Jaren Jackson Jr. with the board. Donovan Mitchell off to the races. 30 seconds. You have an opportunity for a massive basket, and they're going to Carmelo Anthony. Melo, LeBron James defending him. Melo finds Jackson Jr. Jackson's drive to kick it back out to Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell looking for an opening, getting the screen from Embiid. The two-man game. Donovan Mitchell's pull up. It's no good. Cleveland timeout. Coming out the huddle, down by 3. What do the Cavaliers have up their sleeves? Luka with it. I feel like you need the 3. You can't go for the quick 2, can you? Luka pulling it out. LeBron, King James for 3 in the tie. LeBron for the tie. 1.3 left. Detroit is going to have to inbound this ball and shoot immediately, or we may have an overtime in a Game 7. They get it in. Donovan Mitchell, a quality look. Mitchell misses. Wow. But unfortunately, Cleveland ran away with this one in overtime. It's not the storybook ending we were hoping for, but you had a chance. The Pistons had a chance. They just didn't have enough. It is what it is. The Cavaliers will go on to win the NBA championship this season, giving LeBron his 5th with still a perfect finals record, officially ending any doubts in the rivalry. So as Carmelo goes on to retire and enter the Hall of Fame, we look back at how different the league is in this reality. The Pistons were making it to multiple finals over the years, and guys like Steve Nash and Derrick Rose were champs in this universe. Kobe was a 6-time champion, matching Jordan in that aspect. And of course, LeBron may have benefited the most, with 5 rings and a flawless record. But most importantly, of course, was Carmelo Anthony, the biggest change, with a number of accolades in this universe. And to think, this all could have happened if the Pistons had just drafted Melo.